This happened a few months ago. I was in my mid-30s, working a temporary shift at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I always dreamed of finding alien life. I thought working on the K-218B mission would be the highlight of my career. The control room was cramped and dimly lit, filled with the hum of computers. I was excited but felt a weight on my shoulders. One afternoon, I sat at my workstation. It was normal, just another day of analyzing data. I scrolled through signals when something caught my eye. The patterns were strange, unsettling. I thought it was interference, maybe a glitch. I documented everything. Maybe I was trying too hard to see patterns. As days passed, the signals got stronger. My heart raced each time I logged in. On the third day, I heard something similar to the deep-sea sounds recorded from Earth. My fingers trembled as I wrote notes. The room felt smaller each time I looked around. By the end of the week, some colleagues started to vanish. One minute they were there, the next they were gone. I asked other co-workers where they went, but nobody knew. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. But unknown intelligence echoed in my head. I felt paranoid, like I was being watched. The signals seemed to call to me. I couldn't shake the idea that something was reaching out. My obsession deepened. I started isolating myself. The whispers of my colleagues faded into the background. Each hour in that lab felt like losing touch with reality. Then I began to see things. Faces of my missing friends appeared in my peripheral vision. I wasn't sure if I was just tired or if the signals were playing tricks on me. Each time I looked back, the faces were gone. I felt a coldness, an unseen presence waiting to be understood. One evening, I stared at the signals. It hit me, the frequency pulsed, forming messages I thought I could decipher. What was I doing? This wasn't science. Suddenly, I heard a whisper, clear as day, cutting through the silence. I turned quickly. Nobody was there. I didn't know if it was madness or something worse. The signals were still waiting. I hesitated, but they grew stronger. If it was a call, should I dare to answer? I remembered the deep ocean below K-218B. Why did it draw me in? The whispers filled my mind as I sat alone. Each day in that lab felt like I was sinking deeper into the unknown. I fought to break free from the signals, but they pulled me back. I realized my colleagues were gone, taken by an invisible force. The shadows crept closer as I sat in the control room. I was afraid of what awaited me. It felt wrong, but I couldn't turn away. The signals pulsed again. I took a breath and leaned closer to the screen. I felt the urge to understand, to unravel the mystery. Would I get lost like the rest of them? The next day, I stepped into the control room with a purpose. I needed to do something about the signals. I couldn't ignore them anymore. My heart raced as I logged in. The room felt colder, the hum of machines echoing my inner turmoil. I brought up the waveforms again. This time, a deeper, synchronized pattern appeared. I grabbed my notes, comparing the frequency against everything we had recorded. That's when I felt it. A tightness in my chest. The signals were not just noise. They were intentional. Then, I heard a voice, low and distorted. I couldn't make out the words, but the urgency caused my skin to crawl. I glanced around, half expecting a colleague to jump out from behind a desk. But it was still just me. Alone. The unease intensified, fueling my frustration. Why wasn't anyone else noticing this? I decided to check the archives. I needed to know if any other anomalies had been recorded before my arrival. I pulled up historical data from the K-218B project. As I sifted through old reports, my heart sank. There were mentions discreet and vague of strange signals that had caused similar reactions. References to disappearances, too. But those reports were buried in technical jargon. No one wanted to admit anything unusual was happening. I felt a chill run down my spine. What if I was next? Suddenly, the lights flickered. The computers buzzed strangely, and my screen went blank. Panic surged through me. It was a power outage, I told myself. But a calm, unsettling whisper seeped through the room, as if it was getting louder rather than quieter. "Help us." I pulled myself together and rebooted the system, but part of me wondered if I should just walk away. My logical mind battled my growing fear. What if that voice was a warning? Or a plea? Before I could decide, the power surged back to life, the screen illuminating with new data. There was a new signal again, morphing into what looked like a basic structure. I squinted at the screen. It resembled some kind of shape, almost familiar, like a gateway. I reached for my notes. My instinct was to analyze it, to understand. At that moment, the room shifted. The air thickened. I felt pressure on my chest. I wasn't just in the lab. I was inside something watching. I glanced away from the screen to see a shadow flit past my peripheral vision. I turned, heart racing, but there was nothing there. The whisper returned, clearer this time. "Come." My breath hitched. The room felt alive, pulsing with anticipation. I gripped the edge of my desk. This wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. I was torn. Could I really follow the signal, break through the threshold of the unknown? When I noticed it, a figure appeared against the dim glow of the control panel. Their face was hazy, shifting like the very signals I had been studying. I blinked, and the figure melted away. Nothing left but the unsettling chill in the air. I couldn't stay here. Not when something was coming for me. What had I done by digging too deep? I stood up, heart racing, ready to flee. But before I could step away, the machines blared to life. A red warning light flashed above me, accompanied by the sound of alarms. The atmosphere twisted, as if the room itself were trying to contain something desperate and unseen. Now I was truly trapped in a game I couldn't comprehend. Before I could escape, a static-filled voice echoed out, loud and demanding. "You need to listen, but to what?" I wasn't sure. It felt like the beginning of a nightmare unraveling. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping to block out the chaos around me. The alarms blared like sirens of doom, drowning everything in a sea of panic. I could still hear the voice, clear and insistent. "You need to listen." Sweat trickled down my back as I forced myself to look at the screen again. Through the flashing alerts, a new waveform pulsed, vivid and sharp. It wasn't random, it was different. Almost like it was trying to speak a language of its own. "Help us." The words echoed in my mind, a chant that made my heart race. I took a shaky breath and leaned closer to the monitor. I had to decipher the pattern, or I would be consumed by the fear crawling up my spine. As I worked, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a split second. When they returned, the face was back, clearer this time. No longer just a shadow, but a figure that seemed to cling to the edges of my vision. It reached out, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to respond. "What do you want?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, another wave shot across the screen, syncing with my pounding heart. For a brief moment, it looked like numbers, coordinates floating in the void. I jotted them down quickly, wondering if they could lead me somewhere, anywhere other than this oppressive lab. Then it hit me. What if those numbers pointed to a physical location? I could check them against existing maps of K218b. My fingers flew over the keyboard, desperate for a connection to reality. The isolation of the room pressed in on me, thickening the air, making each breath feel like a struggle. Just as I pulled up the maps, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath misting in front of me. A wave of dread wrapped around my chest. I looked up, scanning the room, half expecting to see the figure again. Instead, I saw movement in the corner, hints of shadow shifting with purpose. "Leave this place." The voice had changed, shifting from a whisper to a rollicking wind. Panic clawed at my throat. "You have to go." Before I could process it, the console erupted with static, drowning out everything else. I squinted at the screen, trying to concentrate over the noise. Just when I thought I might lose my mind, one phrase cut through the chaos: "They are here." My pulse quickened. I didn't want to stick around to find out who or what they were. My hands trembled as I grabbed my notes, but the screen took hold of my attention again. One of the coordinates blinked, tapping at the back of my mind, urging me to act. Should I stay and risk the unknown or flee this place filled with shadowy presences? My legs felt anchored to the ground, but instinct screamed at me to move. Before I could think twice, I pressed my palms against the desk and bolted for the exit, but as I reached the door, something cold brushed against my arm. I turned, heart pounding, and came face to face with that figure once more, its form barely discernible in the dim light. "You need to listen," it cried, urgency thick in the air, just before everything went dark. A sudden fear gripped me, twisting my stomach. It wasn't over yet. The darkness was suffocating. I instinctively squeezed my eyes shut tighter, waiting for my heart to stop racing. As the silence wrapped itself around me, I felt the chill on my skin fade just enough for my mind to begin racing again. What had happened? I opened my eyes slowly, expecting some horror in front of me. Light flickered back to life, revealing the lab, but everything felt different. The alarms had quieted, like a distant storm past. I had a glance at the monitor still on, still a chaotic mess, but the face was gone. I blinked, searching the room for any sign of that figure. The air felt heavy and still, making every small sound louder, every echo more sinister. "Get it together," I whispered to myself. I had to focus. I turned back to the screen, seeing the coordinates ID written down flash at me like a beacon. "If they're real," I murmured, "then they must lead somewhere." But where? Just then, a sharp noise broke the silence, like a metallic clank echoing from the hallway outside the lab. My breath caught in my throat. Was it someone else? Or something else? My instinct was to freeze, but curiosity tugged at me too. I took a hesitant step toward the doorway. My heart drummed in my chest as I pushed the door open just enough to peek through. The hallway stretched out in both directions, oppressive and dark. Shadows danced against the walls, flickering like ghosts. I strained my ears, trying to detect any hint of movement. Nothing. Just the distant hum of the lab equipment behind me. I stepped into the hallway, pulled by an unseen force. The coordinates flashed in my mind again, almost louder than the alarms had been. If I didn't follow through, what was going to happen? I wasn't sure, but the figure had pleaded for me to listen. Maybe it knew something important. I moved cautiously toward the left side of the hall, gut twisting with each step. The wall panels were cold and damp, and desperation bubbled beneath my skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Suddenly, I stumbled over something on the floor, an object half covered by shadows. I knelt to take a closer look, and a jolt of shock raced through me. It was a small device, unfamiliar yet eerily similar to the monitoring tools I was used to. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my palm. Had someone else been in this very space? That S when I saw it, an insignia stamped on the device. It was hard to make out in the dim light, but it looked like a symbol ID seen on government documents. Something deep in my gut told me I shouldn't have found it. As if in response to my thoughts, a sudden crash echoed behind me, shaking the floor and rattling my nerves. I turned, adrenaline flooding my system. Adrenaline pushed me to my feet, dragging me back toward the lab. I needed answers, and above all, I needed to protect myself from whatever was chasing me. But first, I had to decipher the device. I clutched it tightly, heart racing. One thing was certain, I was not alone. And whatever was out there was coming for me. I darted into the lab, slamming the door shut behind me. The metal clanged against the frame and echoed, mocking the sudden silence that followed. I pressed my back against the door, my breath coming in quick gasps. Whatever was out there, it had time to catch up. I looked down at the device again. Its surface was cool against my palm, and the insignia seemed to pulse under my touch. I quickly scanned the lab for anything familiar, anything that could help me make sense of this mess. There had to be a reason someone left it here. The monitors blinked, casting shifting shadows around the small space. I approached one of the desks cluttered with equipment, grabbing a small flashlight to help me see better. The device fit in the palm of my hand, but it was oddly intricate. I needed to find a way to activate it. As I rummaged through drawers filled with papers, the low hum of the lab came back, vibrating under the surface. That gentle noise sounded almost comforting amidst the chaos, but I couldn't let it distract me. My mind raced with questions. Had the figure been trying to warn me about how dangerous this place truly was? When the lights flickered. My heart sank, and I locked eyes with the monitor again. One of the readouts started to change, numbers scrolling in quick succession. My breath hitched. The coordinates. They weren't just random, they were connected to the readings from K218b. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. An oppressive darkness enveloped me, choking the air around me. The only sound was the pounding of my heart and the whirring of the lab equipment that was still active. I fumbled for the flashlight, quickly clicking it on. A weak beam carved through the blackness, revealing cobwebs and discarded tools strewn about the floor. Then came the noise again, a soft, unmistakable scuffling from outside the lab. It was closer this time, deliberate, like someone or something was pacing. My mind struggled to process it. Who was out there? Had they come back for the device? The realization sent a rush of adrenaline through my veins once more. I needed to make a decision. I could hide, but I knew time was not on my side. The coordinates held potential answers, and if I stayed here, I risked being trapped. I had to get to them. Taking a deep breath, I darted to the side of the lab, where my equipment lay arranged. I snatched a data pad and shoved the device into my pocket. The scuffling grew louder, and time for hesitation evaporated. Whatever had been chasing me had come home. I would either discover the truth about the coordinates or become the next victim in this unfolding mystery. As I moved toward the exit, I swore I felt something brush against my shoulder, a cold touch that made me shudder. I opened the door a crack and slipped into the hallway, the flashlight illuminating a painful glow around the edges. I couldn't look back now. Something was waiting for me in the shadows. I had to find out what lay ahead, but as I turned the corner, the air felt charged, like a storm was about to break. I wasn't just running toward answers, I was running toward a confrontation I could hardly comprehend. I stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding louder than the soft hum of the lab equipment behind me. The flashlight beam flickered against the walls, revealing peeling paint and shadowy corners that seemed to close in. Every scuffle outside echoed in my ears, each step retreating from the chaos. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, following me just out of sight. A quick glance down the corridor showed no immediate threat. I turned to the left, where the flickering overhead lights hinted at what might lay beyond. The atmosphere was thick, weighted with a sense of danger that made me hesitate. My fingers tightened around the flashlight. I crept forward. The coordinates from the device raced through my mind, pulling my focus. I needed to figure out how to activate it. There had to be something that connected the device to what was happening outside. I couldn't shake the memory of the figure in the lab and their warning. What if this device held the key to understanding it all? As I neared the end of the hallway, I spotted a door slightly ajar. The faint light spilling from inside seemed like a beacon. I approached cautiously, my insides twisting. I pushed it open just enough to slip through without drawing attention. Inside was cluttered with more equipment, but this room felt different. A series of monitors lined the far wall, their screens displaying various readings. I stepped further in, curiosity battling with my instincts. Then I saw one monitor was connected to an external camera feed. I felt drawn to it. The images flickered, revealing a dark expanse beyond the lab. Large containment units filled the space, and the shadows moved. I squinted closer, fighting a mix of recognition and disbelief. The shapes were humanoid, shifting among the structures. My breath hitched. They looked similar to the figure I'd seen earlier but with intricate markings on their skin, glowing subtly in the dim light. They were real. My thoughts raced as questions spiraled. Were they experimenting with the K218B findings? Or were they the source of the chaos? Suddenly, a loud bang resonated from the main entrance of the lab. I jerked back from the monitor, heart racing. The sound had been very close, and I wouldn't have much time. I had to act fast. Glancing back at the array of equipment, I noticed an interface panel on the desk with a clear label, Device Activation. I rushed to it, fingers flying over the controls. The screen blinked to life, displaying a series of options, but I didn't have the time to decipher them all. Just then, the door I entered crashed open, revealing the shadowy figure from the lab, their face obscured but their posture threatening. "I wouldn't do that," they said, their voice low and menacing that I froze, trapped between my need to uncover the truth and the impending threat closing in. The device in my pocket felt suddenly heavier. Would it protect me? Or reveal even more perilous truths? I couldn't hesitate any longer. "Who are you?" I shouted, desperately seeking clarity amidst the rising chaos. The figure stepped closer, and I could see the glint of the markings on their skin, just like the shapes on the monitor. They raised a hand, and the room fell silent, as if the very air held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The figure's hand hovered in the air, and a strange energy filled the room. I felt the temperature drop, an invisible force pressing against my chest. My mind raced, caught between fear and an inexplicable curiosity. What did they want? "Listen carefully," they said, their voice a mix of authority and urgency. "You're not safe here. They are coming for you." "Who's coming?" I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. I needed answers, but I was also painfully aware of the ticking clock. The bang from earlier echoed in my mind, a reminder that danger was very real. "They are different," the figure said, lowering their hand. "They will not hesitate." Their eyes flickered toward the door. "You must trust me. We have little time." My instincts screamed to run, but something was compelling me to stay. I could see the markings on their skin radiating faint light, hinting at a deeper connection to whatever was happening outside. "Why should I trust you?" "Because we want the same thing," they replied, stepping into the light, and for the first time, I saw their face. It was striking, almost ethereal, features that felt familiar yet alien. The truth about the K218B findings. The real threat. Before I could respond, another loud crash came from the hallway, closer this time. The figure's expression turned grave. "We don't have time. They may already know you are here." I had no choice. I had to decide quickly. "What do I need to do?" "Activate the device," they said. "But not yet. We need to wait for the right moment. They will be watching." Just then, a flicker of light caught my eye on one of the monitors. I turned quickly, and to my horror, I saw the humanoid figures from the camera feed moving closer. Their glowing markings pulsed, mirroring the frantic beat of my heart. They were in the maze of containment units outside, heading straight for the lab entrance. "There!" I hissed, pointing at the screen. "They're coming." The figure's gaze hardened. "We need to prepare. They can sense your presence now." "What do you mean, sense?" I asked, panic rising. "They can feel the energy in the air. It draws them to you," they explained, urgency lacing their words. "We must find a way to hide or to fight. The device may not only activate, it may also be a weapon." I glanced back at the interface. Any hope of learning its secrets felt like it was slipping away. "What's the plan?" The figure moved toward the desk, fingers tapping on the interface. "We'll divert their attention. I need you to focus all your energy on the device when the time comes. It might just be our only chance. Another crash reverberated through the lab. The door threatened to burst open. I could only hope that this strange ally knew what they were doing. "Get ready," they said, their voice low, eyes locked on the door. "It's about to get chaotic." My heart raced as I gathered my thoughts. I might not understand everything yet, but instinctively, I knew this was the moment that would change everything. Then, without warning, the door flew open. A figure stood silhouetted in the entrance, a tall, shadowy form. They stepped into the light, and my breath caught. It wasn't just one. There were several. I felt an awful truth settle in my gut. This wasn't just an encounter, it was the beginning of something far darker than I could have imagined. The figures filled the doorway, their features hidden in shadow, but the glowing markings on their bodies shone like dying stars. My body tensed as they moved closer, gliding silently across the floor. Panic exploded in my chest, urging me to flee, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "Now!" the figure beside me urged, their voice a harsh whisper. "Activate the diversion." I had no time to process what that meant. With shaking hands, I rushed to the interface. My fingers fumbled over the controls, heart pounding in my ears. The figures outside lingered, surveying the room, their movements unnaturally fluid. It felt like they were toying with us, watching intently. "Choose a frequency," they shouted, eyes darting between the monitors. The one that caught their attention before. I scanned the screen, searching for a signal. I had no experience with this technology, just panic and instinct. Finally, I spotted a flickering light, a frequency that seemed to hum with energy. I pressed it. The lab filled with an odd, resonating sound, vibrating in the air like a distant siren. The figures shifted, their glowing markings intensifying. They turned toward the source, their focus now drawn away from me. I started to breathe a little easier but knew this was only temporary. "That might buy us some time," my ally said as they moved to my side, peering at the monitors with a worried expression. "But we need to act quickly. They won't be distracted for long." "What do we do now?" I asked, uncertain, my hands trembling. "Get ready to focus your energy into the device," they replied, eyes narrowing. "The moment it seems they are distracted, we'll initiate the next part of the plan." I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. I didn't understand the device, nor how to harness whatever power I had inside me. But I was running out of options. As I prepared myself, the figures started to approach the flickering source of sound, their movements deliberate, almost cautious. Suddenly, one of them halted, turning its head toward us. Its luminescent eyes locked onto mine, and a shiver ran down my spine. They weren't just searching for noise, they were hunting. "They know we're here." I gasped, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hold your ground," the figure beside me commanded, their voice steady yet urgent. "Stay focused. Don't show fear." An intense pressure filled the air, vibrating against my skin. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, trying to calm my racing heart. I didn't just have to activate the device, I had to light the spark, whatever that meant. But could I even trust myself to do that? The creature before me took a step forward, its glowing markings seemingly pulsating with overwhelming energy. I could tell it was on the verge of making a decision. Then, just when it appeared ready to pounce, something clicked in the back of my mind. That look from the figure, that urgency, it was now or never. I opened my eyes, determination surging through me. If I was going to survive, I needed to embrace the unknown. "Now!" I shouted. My ally's hand shot out, pressing another button on the console. Alarms blared and lights flashed. The noise escalated, becoming a chaotic cacophony. The figures jerked back, momentarily disoriented, but for how long? As the figures reeled, I felt a strange energy building inside me, merging with the device at my fingertips. I couldn't hold back anymore. I knew what to do, and deep down, I realized there was no turning back. Focus! I yelled, pouring every ounce of energy I could into the device. That's when I felt it. An explosion of light burst forth from the device, casting shadows on the walls and illuminating the room in an eerie glow. But in that moment of illumination, I caught sight of something that made my heart drop further into my stomach. A figure was lurking in the shadows behind the others, eyes filled with malicious intent. Someone else was in the lab. I hadn't just activated a weapon. I had opened a door to something far worse. The light from the device illuminated everything, creating stark contrasts and shadows that danced erratically around the room. I squinted into the brilliance, trying to make sense of the horror unfolding. The figure that had been hiding behind the others stepped into view, a twisted grin forming on its face that I froze. This was no average threat. Its presence radiated a dark energy that twisted my stomach in knots. I felt the air grow thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. I could hear a low, almost hypnotic hum coming from the creature, and I realized with dismay that it fed on the chaos we were creating. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice much shakier than I intended. The creature tilted its head, as if considering my question. Its glowing markings flickered, casting eerie shadows over its features. "Curiosity can be a double-edged sword," it replied, its voice dripping with malice. "But you will learn soon enough." Before I could respond, the other figures, now seemingly revived from their momentary disorientation, began to converge on us. They moved as one, a wave of glowing bodies with intent to capture. I glanced at my ally, still by my side but looking increasingly worried. "Can you control it?" they shouted over the alarms blaring in the lab. I don't know." I yelled back, panic rising. An idea struck me, and I shot another look toward the console. What if I could redirect the energy? The thought both thrilled and terrified me. I took a deep breath, focusing my thoughts. "I'll try to manipulate the device. You keep them distracted." "Are you crazy?" My ally's eyes widened. "That could backfire. Better than standing here waiting to be caught." I insisted. I turned back to the console. My mind had to work quickly, aligning the flickering lights on the screen with the intense energy swirling around me. I shut out everything: the noises, the figures approaching us, even my doubts. If I was going to do this, I had to immerse myself in the energy flowing between the device and me. I reached out, feeling the power and directing it toward a new frequency. Suddenly, the lab erupted with even louder sounds, sending waves of disorientation through the figures around us. It worked. They hesitated, their focus wavering again, but I wasn't done yet. I felt a surge of confidence. The counterbalance created a momentary stabilizing field, a protective barrier. It was fleeting, something I could use only for a few seconds, but it was better than nothing. "Now!" I yelled to my ally. Together, we charged at the figures, using the momentary distraction to slip past them toward the back of the lab. I could hear their frustrated hisses behind us as we moved. My heart raced with fear and adrenaline. What would happen if we got trapped? Then, I stumbled upon something remarkable. A doorway hidden behind a shelf, half covered in shadows. I gestured toward my ally, "This way." When we slipped through, I felt the air shift around us, heavy with tension. I turned to look back at the figures, who were now returning to their hunting stance, their glow stealing the warmth from the room. "What now?" my ally panted, his face pale. That I had no answer. I was still trying to process the lurking menace. But there was one thing I knew for sure: we had only just awakened something we didn't understand. And now we had to deal with the consequences. I stumbled backward, heart racing, gripping my ally's arm as we took in our new surroundings. The small room we found ourselves in was dimly lit and lined with shelves filled with crates sealed tightly. A control panel flickered on the far wall, but the first priority was to put distance between ourselves and the figures lurking in the lab. "What now?" my ally panted, still scanning the shadows with a mix of apprehension and disbelief. As I searched for a way out, the reality of our situation crashed down on me. The spectral figures weren't just searching for something, they commanded an insidious force, and we had somehow provoked it. "We can't stay here," I finally said, turning to the panel. "There might be a way to override the lockdown." I moved toward the panel, its buttons blinking in an erratic pattern that seemed to pulse, much like the energy that currently coursed through me. My fingers hovered over the controls, hesitating. Would activating this circuit lock the figures behind again, or would it make things worse? "They'll find us," my ally urged, voice laced with fear that I shoved my uncertainty aside. "We don't have time." My resolve hardened as I pressed a series of buttons, the screen lighting up with more complex data. I focused on a shimmering icon labeled Override. With each beep confirming my selections, I felt the air shift. A sound pierced through the walls, something akin to a tortured scream echoing and reverberating like a warning. Had I made a mistake? Without warning, the ground shook. The figures were aware of where we were, their shadows stretching unnaturally, fusing with the darkness as they closed in. Panic surged through me. "Hurry! We need to get out. I can't find the exit," my ally shouted, eyes wide with desperation. Just then, the panel displayed a map of the facility, a path to a nearby emergency exit, sparking a moment of hope. I pointed at it. "There. Head that way, I'll keep this open." As I worked quickly to maintain the panel's code, I could feel the overwhelming pressure of their presence. The energy between us felt dangerously charged, but beneath it lay the underlying fear of being captured by beings far beyond my comprehension. I glanced at my ally as they ran toward the exit. "I'll join you," I shouted, but just as I turned to escape, a dark shape materialized in the doorway we had just passed through. I froze. It was one of the figures, advanced and ominous, a harbinger of what awaited if I failed. "Go!" my ally urged from the exit, gesturing desperately. I backed away slowly, the room suffocating in its silence except for the hiss of the panel. If I could just stay one step ahead, use this sudden outburst of power coursing through me. "No. You don't know what you're invoking," the figure warned, its voice like gravel scraping against steel. I didn't pause. I felt the same energy rising within me as I had before. In a moment of sheer instinct, I pushed it outward, sending a shockwave that ricocheted through the confines of the room. The figure flinched, its form breaking, scattering like mist, but just as quickly, it reformed, an even darker presence. "Powerless." It spoke, and the shiver it sent through me felt like the breath of death itself. Before I could respond, my ally was back, hands entwined in desperation. "We need to go now," they pleaded, hints of panic flickering in their eyes. I took a deep breath and reached for the final pulsating icon on the control panel. Whatever secret it harbored could perhaps alter our fate. With determination, I pressed it down, feeling the release of energy as it transformed into a blinding light. "Move!" I shouted. As we lunged toward the exit, the blinding light split the darkness, illuminating our path but also the figures gathering behind us. The last look I caught of the distorted shadows held malice, a promise that this wasn't the final confrontation. We darted down a narrow corridor, navigating through doorways and turns, uncertain if we evaded the danger or if it was still at our heels. Eventually, we burst into a maintenance shaft, breathing hard and fueled by adrenaline. The walls seemed to pulse, responding to our fear as gusts of air escaped from unseen vents. "What was that?" my ally gasped, breathless. "I have no idea," I admitted, uncertainty sinking in. "But I think it's only the beginning. They want something from this facility." As we crawled deeper into the labyrinth, I couldn't help but feel the weight of dread settle in. What were those beings? What secrets were buried within K218B? Our escape had merely shifted the battlefield. "I don't think we're alone," I whispered, my voice trembling. Outside shadows shifted. The realization lingered. Perhaps we weren't running from what we could understand, but deeper into something larger, beyond all comprehension. As we advanced, uncertainty gnawed at me. We had merely escaped one danger, but darker questions loomed ahead, unanswered, shrouded in the very fabric of the dark cosmos that haunted us. Months passed since that harrowing experience, and I still think about it sometimes. The figures, the whispers, the unknown. Some nights, I lay awake, staring at the stars, wondering if any of them had been true. That facility was abandoned, left as a monument to mankind's relentless pursuit of knowledge, unsolved mysteries lost to the void. I moved far away, trying to erase that night, but I can't shake its grip on me. Deep down, I wonder if the shadows are still waiting, and I steal glances at the stars, caught between wonder and fear. In the silence of the night, a familiar whisper sometimes calls, a reminder that sometimes knowing too much comes with a price.